after the promotion incident. Even though they talked about it and tried to move on, Ujunwa knew things were no longer the same. She realized she had not been herself, uncertain of what Anthony approved of or not. She had also begun to notice some characteristics about him that made her question their relationship. For instance, a few weeks ago, he came back excitedly telling her he had secured a big contract he had been pursuing for months. Ujunwa had no idea about it. Additionally, she discovered that he avoided discussing matters related to his side of the family, almost as if he were keeping secrets. Over the next few months, Ujunwa threw herself into her work, taking on new projects and seeking out opportunities to grow. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. The management of her company began to see and recognize her renewed dedication. Eventually, another opportunity for advancement came along, and this time, Ujunwa was ready. She applied for the position with confidence, showcasing her accomplishments and the progress she had made since the last offer. Her hard work paid off, and she was promoted to a role that not only suited her skills, but also offered her the growth and challenges she sought. But this role involves a lot of traveling. At first, Ujunwa accepted the promotion without informing Anthony. Eventually, she summoned the courage to tell him, "You accepted promotion without discussing it with me." Anthony flared up. "I didn't think it would be a problem," Ujunwa replied. "It's not like it's out of town. I will just be traveling more." Anthony registered his displeasure, his voice rising with frustration. "But it is a problem, Ujunwa. We were supposed to make this decision together." Ujunwa felt a pang of guilt but stood her ground. "Anthony, I understood you are upset, but this is a great opportunity for me. I didn't want to pass it up." Their conversation spiraled into a heated argument, both of them unwilling to back down. Anthony couldn't shake the feeling that Ujunwa deliberately kept him in the dark, and Ujunwa felt misunderstood and unsupported. Over the next few weeks, the tension between them grew. Small disagreements escalated quickly, and the once strong bond between them started to show signs of strain. They found themselves drifting apart, the gap between them widening with each passing day. Ujunwa poured herself into her new role, trying to find solace in her work, but the joy of her promotion was tainted by the rifts it had caused in her relationship with Anthony. Meanwhile, Anthony felt increasingly annoyed. He felt he wasn't in control and hated the lack of communication between them. Despite their love for each other, neither knew how to bridge the growing gap. Their relationship, once strong, now felt fragile and uncertain. Ujunwa felt very sad as she sat in her room. She kept thinking about what had happened with Anthony. She couldn't believe the words he had said to her. It felt like they were no longer the same happy couple they were once. The love between them had turned into something confusing and painful. As she sat there alone, she thought about everything Adobe had told her earlier. Adobe had tried to give her advice, and she listened, but it seemed like no matter what she tried, things with Anthony kept getting worse. Ujunwa wished she knew how to fix it all. The house was quiet. The ticking of the clock was the only sound she could hear. It was getting late, but Anthony had not come home yet. She felt a little worried, but she didn't know what to do. "I don't want to lose him," Ujunwa whispered to herself. She wiped away a tear that had fallen down her cheek. She thought back to the time when they first met. Anthony used to be so kind and loving. He used to make her laugh and smile all the time. They would spend hours talking and sharing their dreams. But now, everything seemed different. They were always arguing, and it made her heart ache. Ujunwa remembered the days when Anthony would hold her hand and tell her that they would always be together. But now, it felt like they were drifting apart, and she didn't know how to stop it. She wanted to talk to him, to make things right, but every time she tried, it ended in a fight. "I just wish things could go back to how they used to be," she thought sadly. Suddenly, the sound of the front door opening made her sit up. Anthony had come home. Ujunwa didn't know if she should talk to him or just stay in her room. She didn't want to argue again, but she also didn't want to ignore him. She stood up slowly and walked to the door of the bedroom. She opened it just a little and peeked out. She could see Anthony walking towards the living room. He didn't look happy. Ujunwa decided not to say anything. She quietly closed the door and sat back down on the bed. Her heart felt heavy. She didn't know how to make things better between them. She lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling. As she lay there, memories of their happy times together filled her mind. She thought about their first date when Anthony had surprised her with flowers. She smiled a little, remembering how sweet he had been. But the smile quickly faded when she thought about their last argument. Ujunwa closed her eyes, trying to block out the painful thoughts. She wished she could make everything right again, but she didn't know how. The next morning, Ujunwa woke up early. Anthony was still asleep. She quietly got out of bed and went to the kitchen to make breakfast. As she cooked, she thought about what she would say to Anthony. She didn't want to argue again. She just wanted them to talk and understand each other. When breakfast was ready, Ujunwa placed the food on the table. She went to the bedroom and gently woke Anthony up. "Breakfast is ready," she said softly. Anthony didn't say much. He got up and followed her to the kitchen. They ate in silence. Ujunwa could feel the tension between them, but she didn't know how to break it. After breakfast, Anthony stood up and said he had to leave for work. Ujunwa watched as he grabbed his things and headed for the door. She wanted to call out to him, to tell him how she felt, but the words wouldn't come out. When the door closed behind him, Ujunwa felt a deep sadness. She didn't know how long they could go on like this. She sat at the table, staring at her empty plate, feeling lost. Ujunwa spent the rest of the day cleaning the house and trying to keep herself busy. But no matter what she did, her mind kept going back to Anthony. She thought about their relationship and what had gone wrong. She wondered if things would ever get better. As the day went on, Ujunwa decided to visit Adobe again. She needed someone to talk to. She put on her shoes and headed out the door, walking slowly down the street towards the cafe where she and Adobe usually met. When Ujunwa arrived, Adobe was already there, sitting at their favorite table. She waved when she saw Ujunwa approaching. "How are you feeling today?" Adobe asked kindly. Ujunwa sat down and sighed. "I don't know, Adobe. Things are still hard with Anthony. I don't know how to fix it." Adobe nodded, listening carefully. "I understand. Relationship can be tough, especially when there is a lot of stress. Don't give up, Ujunwa. You both love each other. You just need to find a way to talk without it turning into a fight." Ujunwa looked down at the table. "I've tried, but he doesn't listen. He told me to quit my job and start a family. I don't think that's the answer." Adobe frowned. "That's a big decision, Ujunwa. You need to do what's right for you. You shouldn't have to choose between your career and your relationship. There has to be a way to make both of them work." Ujunwa sighed again. "I hope so. I just don't know how to make him see that." The two friends talked for a while longer, and Ujunwa felt a little better after their conversation. Adobe always knew how to make her feel understood and supported. When Ujunwa returned home, the house was empty. Anthony wasn't back from work yet. She sat down on the couch, feeling tired and unsure of what to do next. That evening, Ujunwa decided to try praying again. She knelt beside her bed, just like she had the night before. But this time, she didn't feel so alone. "Dear God," she whispered, "please help me find a way to make things right. I love Anthony and I don't want to lose him. But I also want to follow my dreams. Please show me the way." Ujunwa stayed there for a while, praying quietly. She didn't have all the answers, but she felt a small sense of peace, knowing that she wasn't facing this alone. After her prayer, Ujunwa climbed into the bed and closed her eyes. She hoped that tomorrow would bring a little more clarity and that somehow she and Anthony could find a way to work through their problems. As she drifted off to sleep, Ujunwa held onto the hope that love would guide them back to each other, no matter how far apart they seemed now. Ujunwa sat on the couch, feeling heavy in her heart. For many days, she thought about what Anthony had said. He wanted her to quit her job and focus on having a baby. Ujunwa loved Anthony, but she also loved her work. It was part of who she was. After a lot of thinking, Ujunwa made a decision. She would get pregnant, but she would not give up her career. She hoped this would show Anthony that she cared about their marriage. Ujunwa believed they could find a way to make both family and work fit together. One evening, Ujunwa waited for Anthony to come home. She felt nervous but determined. When he walked through the door, she took a deep breath. "Anthony, can we talk?" she asked. They met in the living room. Anthony looked at her, a little worried. "All right, what's on your mind?" Ujunwa took another breath. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about resigning from my job and getting pregnant." Anthony nodded, listening closely. "I've made a decision. I want us to start a family, and I'm willing to get pregnant. But I can't give up my job. My work is very important to me. I believe we can find a way to make both things work." Anthony's face was hard to read. He sat down on the couch, and Ujunwa joined him. "I understand your concerns," she said softly, "but we can help each other and have a balanced life. I want to be a good wife and mother, and I also want to follow my dreams. If we work together, we can make this work." There was a silence for a moment as Anthony thought about her words. Finally, he spoke. "I just want what's best for us, Ujunwa. I want us to be happy and stable." "I want that too," she replied. "But we need to communicate better. Can we try to do that?" Anthony sighed. "I believe your work is too stressful. I want you to quit your job. That's what I want." Ujunwa felt her heart drop. She felt frustrated and alone. It seemed there was no way to win with Anthony. She thought about her marriage. She felt like she had given up a lot. Anthony traveled often, and she always supported him. Sometimes he was so busy with work that he didn't even call her for a whole day. Suddenly, Ujunwa realized that the nice things Anthony used to do for her had disappeared. She couldn't remember the last time they went out for dinner or had fun together. It felt like all he wanted were demands. She felt sad and regretful. She began to think about her happiness. The only thing that brought her joy was her job. Now, it seemed like Anthony wanted to take that away. No, she wouldn't give up her job. She would rather leave the marriage. With no children yet, it felt like a good time to think about a divorce. Ujunwa was tired of Anthony's demands and selfishness. Before making a final decision, Ujunwa reached out to Anthony's family. His parents lived far away, while his sister was nearby. She hoped to find some support or someone to listen to her. Ujunwa always felt that Anthony's sister understood women's struggles better. One afternoon, Ujunwa called Anthony's sister and asked if they could meet. She was welcomed warmly, but Ujunwa felt nervous as they sat down together. "Thank you for meeting me," Ujunwa said. "I really need someone to talk to about what's happening in my marriage with Anthony." She listened carefully as Ujunwa shared her feelings. She talked about feeling neglected and how Anthony's demands were affecting her happiness. Ujunwa explained how accepting a promotion had strained their relationship. After Ujunwa finished, there was a quiet moment. Anthony's sister sighed and shook her head. "Ujunwa, I understand you are having a hard time, but Anthony is my brother. I can't take sides. You two need to sort this out by yourselves." Ujunwa felt a sinking feeling. "I hoped you could help me talk to him. I wanted you to understand my side of things." Anthony's sister looked serious. "Marriage is about compromise. Maybe you need to think about what is most important to you. Anthony wants a wife who will take care of the home and children. If you can't handle that, maybe you need to rethink your choices." Ujunwa felt hurt and unsupported. She left the house feeling heavy in her heart. She had hoped for kindness, but instead, she felt more alone. This made her decision clearer. She realized she could not depend on Anthony's family for help. The only way to find her happiness was to take control of her own life. When Anthony came home that evening, he looked very angry. He had learned about Ujunwa's meeting with his sister, and he was not happy at all. As soon as he walked in, he confronted her. "Why did you talk to my sister about our problems?" "Ujunwa, family matters should stay private. You shouldn't have involved her." Ujunwa stood tall, though she was scared inside. "I needed someone to talk to, someone who might help you see that your demands are unfair. I felt so alone, Anthony." "Alone? Do you think you are the only one struggling? I work hard for us, and this is how you repay me?" Anthony's voice grew louder, full of frustration. Ujunwa took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "You keep making demands. With you, it feels like it's all or nothing. I'm losing my mind. I needed someone to understand, but now I feel even more alone." Anthony shook his head. "You should not have talked to my family about our private life. Now my sister thinks less of me. Less of me." Ujunwa felt a wave of sadness. "Must everything be about you, Anthony? I reached out because we need help, but now I see that I can't count on anyone else to fix this. I have to decide for myself." The argument continued, words flying back and forth. Anthony accused Ujunwa of not prioritizing him, while she pointed out his lack of support and understanding. After a while, both of them were tired. Anthony went to the guest room, slamming the door behind him. Ujunwa sat on the couch, tears streaming down her face. The distance between them felt bigger than ever, and she was more certain that leaving the marriage was the only way to regain her happiness. Ujunwa had made up her mind. She was ready to take charge of her life, even if it meant saying goodbye to Anthony. She was strong and knew that she had to do what was best for herself. The room was quiet now, and Ujunwa took a moment to reflect on her life. She had to be brave and find her own path. As night fell, Ujunwa thought about what lay ahead. She felt scared but also hopeful. She knew she had to build a new life, one where she could be both a mother and a woman who pursued her dream. With her heart set, she was ready to face whatever comes next. Ujunwa had made a tough choice. She had decided to leave her marriage with Anthony. She was ready to start a new life, even though she knew it wouldn't be easy. Ujunwa understood that she couldn't stay in a marriage where she was not happy. Her job gave her joy, but Anthony always wanted her to stop working. She couldn't let that happen. She had to think about her future. Ujunwa had spoken to Adobe, her best friend, and Adobe had been very supportive. She even told Ujunwa she could stay with her until she found her own place. Ujunwa felt grateful to have such a friend by her side, but Ujunwa knew she needed more help. So she met with a lawyer to understand what she needed to do to end her marriage. After speaking with the lawyer, Ujunwa knew what her next steps were. She needed to save money so that she could take care of herself once she left. Every little amount she could save, she set aside just in case. She knew it was the smart thing to do. Slowly, she began preparing for the day she would leave Anthony and start a new chapter of her life. One evening, Anthony came home from another business trip. Ujunwa knew it was time to talk to him. She was nervous, but she had made up her mind. She had to tell him how she felt and what she was going to do. "Anthony, we need to talk," Ujunwa said, her voice calm but serious. Anthony looked at her, confused. "What is it?" "I've been unhappy for a long time. This marriage isn't working for me anymore. I want a divorce," Ujunwa said, her heart heavy but her mind clear. Anthony looked shocked. "Are you serious? You want to leave me?" he asked. Ujunwa nodded. "Yes, I have tried, but I can't do this anymore. I need to be happy, and this marriage is not making me happy." Anthony didn't say much. He just looked at her with a cold expression and said, "Fine," before walking away. Ujunwa felt a wave of sadness. She had hoped that maybe Anthony would try to fix things, that he would care enough to fight for their marriage, but his response told her everything she needed to know. He didn't care enough to make things better. Tears welled up in her eyes, but Ujunwa wiped them away. She had made the right decision. Even though it hurt, she knew she couldn't stay in a marriage where she didn't feel loved or appreciated. She needed to move forward. In the days that followed, Ujunwa packed her things and moved into Adobe's house. It wasn't easy, but she knew she had to stay strong. She continued going to work, doing her best to focus on her job. She was good at what she did, and that gave her some comfort. But even though she was doing well at work, Ujunwa couldn't shake the sadness she felt inside. Sometimes, when she was alone, Ujunwa thought about Izu. She had loved him once, and she wondered if things had been different if she had chosen him instead of Anthony. She regretted not being patient and trusting God to guide her. If she had waited, she could have built a good life for herself without giving up her Christian faith or marrying for the wrong reasons. The more she thought about Izu, the more she wanted to reach out to him. Maybe she could apologize or maybe explain what had happened and see if there was a way or chance they could reconnect. But as she talked to Adobe about it, her friend was not in favor of the idea. Ujunwa, I don't think it's a good idea to contact Isu. Adobe said gently. Why not? Ujunwa asked, feeling disappointed. Adobe explained that Ujunwa was still dealing with her divorce and that her emotions were all over the place. It's not fair to drag Isu into your life again when things are still so messy. He's moved on and you should focus on healing yourself first, Adobe said. Ujunwa knew Adobe was right, even though it was hard to her. She needed to focus on herself and move forward, not backward. She had to find peace within herself before she could think about bringing someone else into her life again. Ujunwa checked Adobe for her advice and decided to let go of the idea of contacting Isu. Instead, she would focus on rebuilding her life, one step at a time. One day, Ujunwa sat down with her parents to tell them about her decision to leave Anthony. Her parents were surprised and upset. They couldn't believe that she had moved out of her matrimonial home without telling them. Ujunwa, why didn't you tell us? Her mother asked, shocked. Ujunwa took a deep breath. I didn't tell you because I knew you would try to make me stay in the marriage. But I've made my decision and I need to move on. Her father spoke next. We wanted what was best for you, Ujunwa. We thought Anthony was a good match for you. I know you did that, but I have to think about what's best for me now. Staying in the marriage wasn't making me happy, Ujunwa said. Her mother sighed. We just wanted things to work. Mom, I know you wanted the best for me, but I need to take control of my own life. I need to do what is best for me, Ujunwa explained. Her parents looked at her and also looked at each other. Then her father nodded slowly. We understand, Ujunwa. We will support you no matter what. We just want you to be happy. Ujunwa felt a sense of relief wash over her. She hugged her parents, grateful that they understood her decision. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she was ready to face it, one day at a time. Since Ujunwa told her parents she was leaving Anthony, her mother became very worried. She couldn't rest. She kept telling Ujunwa's father, you must do something. If people find out that Ujunwa's marriage had ended, we will be ashamed. Ujunwa's father, quiet for a while, finally decided to step in. He knew it was important to find a solution that would make Ujunwa and Anthony happy again. He and Ujunwa's mother called Ujunwa and Anthony for a family meeting. The day of the meeting came. Ujunwa and Anthony sat in the living room. Ujunwa's father started the conversation. We know things are not easy between you two, he said, his voice gentle, but we believe you can find a way to make it work. We want to help. Anthony was quiet but listened. Ujunwa's mother spoke next. Anthony, we know Ujunwa loves her job. It makes her happy. How about this? Ujunwa can keep working for now, and you two can plan for the future. Once the baby is born, Ujunwa can start her own company. That way, she can balance her work and family. Ujunwa looked at Anthony, waiting for his response. For a long moment, Anthony said nothing. Then finally he nodded. All right, he said, it's important that our child grows up in a good and happy home. Ujunwa felt a small hope in her heart. Maybe things would be different now. Her father smiled, feeling better. I believe this plan can work, he said. Anthony nodded again. I hope it does, he replied. Then everyone looked at Ujunwa, waiting for her to speak. Ujunwa took a deep breath. Fine, she said. I will have the baby. After that, I'll start my company. Her parents smiled. They were happy that Ujunwa and Anthony had agreed to a plan. They hoped it would help them fix their marriage. But on his way home, Anthony wasn't happy. He was angry inside. How dare Ujunwa try to leave him? He had already started seeing another woman when she left. He smiled to himself, thinking, Ujunwa, you should have divorced me. But now that you are back, you will regret it. I will make you feel pain. Ujunwa did not know Anthony was planning to hurt her. She began to prepare to move back to her house. Her friend Adobe saw her packing and asked, Are you sure this is what you want, Ujunwa? You have been through a lot with Anthony. Ujunwa stopped packing and looked at Adobe. I think I should give him another chance, she said softly. Adobe shook her head. Do you think a baby and quitting your job will solve everything? Anthony has lied to you many times. He has hurt you. Ujunwa looked down at the floor. I know, she whispered, but I want to try again. Maybe things can change. Adobe sighed. Ujunwa, you are strong. You deserve someone who respects you, not someone who treats you badly. You know that, right? Ujunwa's eyes filled with tears. I just want to believe that people can change, she said. Yes, people can change, Adobe agreed, but only if they really want to. Has Anthony shown you that he wants to change? Ujunwa shook her head slowly. No, she said quietly. Adobe took Ujunwa's hand. Then don't go back. Don't hurt yourself again by hoping for something that may never happen. Ujunwa nodded, wiping her tears. Thank you, Adobe, she said. Anytime, Adobe said with a small smile. Even though Adobe had given her good advice, Ujunwa still felt the pressure from her mother to go back to Anthony. One day, her mother said, Ujunwa, you need to go back to your husband. You must make your marriage work. Ujunwa sighed. Mom, you don't understand. Anthony has hurt me so much. He lied to me, and our problems are not just about having a baby or my job. Her mother waved her hand. All marriages have problems. You have to be strong and fix them. You can't just give up. Ujunwa felt frustrated. Mom, it's more than just problems. It makes me feel like I don't matter. I don't want to live like that. Her mother frowned. Marriage is about sacrifice. You must try harder. What will people say if they find out your marriage has ended? Think about what they will think of our family. Ujunwa felt sad. Mom, I can't live my life worrying about what others will say. I need to think about my happiness. You're being selfish, her mother said sharply. A good wife stands by her husband and makes the marriage work, no matter what. Tears filled Ujunwa's eyes. I've given up so much already. I can't keep giving up everything just to be a good wife. I want to be happy too. Her mother softened a little but still stood her ground. I just want you to be happy. I think you and Anthony can fix this. Ujunwa took a deep breath. I know you want the best for me, Mom, but I need to make my own decision. Going back doesn't feel right. Her mother shook her head, disappointed. I hope you know what you are doing. I appreciate your concern, Mom, Ujunwa said gently, but I have to figure this out myself. Despite everything, Ujunwa gave in to her mother's constant pressure. She packed her things and prepared to return to Anthony. She hoped that things would get better, even though deep inside she wasn't sure. On the day she moved back, her mother came to see her off. I'm proud of you, Ujunwa, her mother said as she hugged her. You're doing the right thing. Ujunwa forced a smile. I hope so, Mom, she said softly. As Ujunwa stepped into the house she once called home, she felt a mix of hope and fear. Little did she know, Anthony had hidden plans. He pretended to be sorry and acted like everything was fine. But inside, he was planning to make Ujunwa suffer. Ujunwa was walking right into his trap. Over the next few months, Ujunwa and Anthony tried to make their marriage work. Ujunwa was still doing well in her job, and even though she had to travel often, she was starting to plan how to open her own business. Anthony also tried to be helpful, but because both of them had jobs that made them travel, they didn't see each other much. Sometimes they wouldn't see each other for days, and sometimes even weeks. After a while, Ujunwa found out she was going to have a baby. She was happy and told her boss, and her boss decided to let her travel less because of the pregnancy. This meant that Ujunwa could stay home more often and rest. But after Ujunwa told Anthony about the baby, things began to change. Anthony started to come home late at night and sometimes didn't come home at all. Ujunwa felt sad and worried. She thought Anthony was spending too much time away from home. She wanted them to be happy and excited about the baby, but Anthony didn't seem to care so much. One day, Ujunwa heard from a friend that Anthony had gone on a trip to Dubai with another woman. She felt very hurt and upset. She decided to ask Anthony about it when he came home. Anthony, where have you been? Why are you staying away from home so much? Anthony looked away and said, I've just been busy with work, Ujunwa, that's all. But Anthony, you weren't at work. I know you went to Dubai with someone else. Anthony was quiet for a moment, then said, You don't know what you are talking about. Ujunwa felt angry. Anthony, I saw messages on your phone. I know you've been talking to another woman. Why are you lying to me? Anthony frowned. Why are you going through my phone? That's not fair. Ujunwa said, I need to know the truth. I'm having your baby, and I feel like you don't care about me anymore. Anthony stood up. I don't have time for this, Ujunwa. You're overreacting. With that, Anthony left the room. Ujunwa felt like her heart was breaking. She wanted their family to be happy, but now she didn't know if Anthony still loved her. Feeling lonely and scared, Ujunwa called her best friend Adobe. Adobe was always there to listen when Ujunwa needed help. Adobe, I don't know what to do. Ujunwa said, Anthony is staying out late, and I found out he's seeing someone else. I'm so hurt. Adobe sighed. Oh, Uju, that's so hard. Have you talked to him? Yes, but he just denies everything. Ujunwa said, he doesn't care about me or the baby. Adobe was quiet for a moment. Uju, you have to think about what's best for you and the baby. Maybe you should get some help from a counselor. Ujunwa nodded. I think you're right. I don't know what else to do. Adobe said, remember, you're not alone. I'm here for you, and your family will support you too. Ujunwa thanked Adobe for her advice. She knew she had to stay strong for her baby, even if Anthony didn't care. She decided to look for a counselor to help her figure out what to do next. Weeks passed, and Ujunwa did her best to stay focused on her baby and her health. She tried not to think about Anthony's late nights or the women he had gone to Dubai with. But it was hard. Every time she looked at her growing belly, she felt both happy and sad. She was excited to be a mother, but she was also scared that her marriage was falling apart. One night, Anthony came home after being away for 2 whole weeks. He didn't tell Ujunwa where he had been or why he hadn't called. Ujunwa felt hurt all over again. She needed to talk to him about their future. Anthony, she said, we need to talk. We can't keep going on like this. We are going to have a baby soon, and we need to figure out how to make things work. Anthony sighed. Ujunwa, I've already told you there is nothing to talk about. Ujunwa felt her eyes filled with tears. How can you say that? We are going to have a child, don't you care? Anthony frowned. I'm tired of this conversation, Ujunwa. Just let it go. Ujunwa followed him as he walked upstairs. Anthony, please, we need to fix this before the baby comes. Anthony turned and yelled, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Suddenly, as Ujunwa took a step forward, her foot slipped on the edge of the carpet. Before she could catch herself, she tumbled down the stairs, landing hard at the bottom. Anthony turned around and saw her fall. Uju, he shouted, rushing down the stairs. Ujunwa lay still, not moving. Anthony tried to wake Ujunwa, shaking her gently, but she didn't respond. Uju, are you okay? Can you hear me? He asked softly, his voice filled with worry. Ujunwa groaned in pain, clutching her stomach as tears rolled down her face. She was scared. The baby. Was the baby okay? Anthony, the baby, she whispered, her voice shaky. I'm calling on the ambulance. Hold on, Uju. You are going to be okay, Anthony assured her. With trembling hands, he died for help. Soon the paramedics arrived. They carefully placed Ujunwa on a stretcher and hurried her to the hospital. As they left, Anthony called Ujunwa's parents and his sister, asking them to come to the hospital quickly. When her parents arrived, they saw Anthony pacing outside the emergency room. Ujunwa's father was concerned. "What happened? Were you two arguing?" he asked, frowning. Anthony felt a pang of guilt. He hadn't told them about the problems in their marriage. "Yes," he admitted, "we had an argument and she slipped on the stairs." Ujunwa's father was surprised. "I thought everything was fine between you two." Anthony nodded, trying to stay calm. "We've had our issues, but this was just a small argument. Every couple argues." Ujunwa's father narrowed his eyes. "I hope you are telling the truth, Anthony. Uju is our only child. If anything happens to her..." He didn't finish the sentence, but the warning was clear. Meanwhile, Ujunwa's mother was crying uncontrollably. She felt responsible for everything. She had convinced Ujunwa to go back to Anthony, even though her daughter had wanted to leave. Now her heart was filled with regret. As they waited, doctors and nurses rushed in and out of Ujunwa's room. Anthony kept pacing, feeling guilty and anxious. He wasn't sure what to expect. After what felt like hours, a doctor approached Anthony. "Mr. Anthony," the doctor began softly, "your wife is stable, but we couldn't save the baby. We tried everything we could. I'm so sorry." Anthony stood still, unsure of how to react. He felt sad about the baby, but at the same time, he had been thinking of leaving Ujunwa. He didn't know how to feel. Ujunwa's parents were heartbroken when they heard about the baby, but they were relieved that their daughter was alive. "Can we see her?" Anthony asked. "She's sleeping now, but you can visit her briefly," the doctor replied. Anthony walked into Ujunwa's room quietly. She looked fragile, lying on the hospital bed, and seeing her like that made him feel cold. He blamed her for everything that had gone wrong between them. He decided at that moment that once she was better, he would file for divorce. After standing in front of the room for a few more minutes, he left to join Ujunwa's parents and his sister. "How is she?" Anthony's sister asked, her voice full of concern. "She's stable. The doctor said she will wake up soon," Anthony replied. Ujunwa's mother, still crying, said, "I need to see her. I need to know if she's really okay." "You can see her when she wakes up," Anthony said quietly. Everyone sat in silence. Ujunwa's father was deep in thought, worried about what the future held for his daughter and her marriage. Finally, Ujunwa began to stir. A nurse informed the family that they could see her. One by one, they entered the room. Ujunwa's eyes opened slowly, and she saw her parents, Anthony's sister, and Anthony standing near her bed. Her mother rushed over to her. "Oh, my darling, how are you feeling?" she asked, reaching out to touch her. But Ujunwa's voice stopped her. "What are you doing here? I don't want to see you." She turned to her father, her face filled with anger. Everyone was shocked. Her mother froze, unable to speak. "Your mother has been worried sick about you," her father said gently. "I don't care. She's the reason I'm in this situation. I don't want her here," Ujunwa said firmly, turning away from her mother. Anthony didn't know how or what to say. He had never seen Ujunwa so angry before. "Come on," Ujunwa's father said to her mother. "Let's give her some space. She's upset right now." Her mother began to cry again as she left the room, saying, "I'm sorry, Uju, please forgive me." After her parents left, Anthony's sister quietly said her goodbyes and left the room too. Ujunwa felt overwhelmed. Her marriage was falling apart. She had lost the baby, and now her relationship with her mother seemed broken as well. Tears streamed down her face. Anthony stood in the corner, watching her. He felt conflicted. He knew he should comfort her, but he don't feel any love for her anymore. Ujunwa looked at him, searching for some sign of care, but he remained distant. "Why is everything falling apart, Anthony?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What did I do to deserve this?" Anthony sighed. "Sometimes things don't work out. It's not anyone's fault." His words did little to comfort Ujunwa. She turned away from him, feeling even more alone. She lay there, staring at the wall, trying to find the strength to keep going. Anthony lingered in the room for a few more moments before deciding to leave. But just as he was about to walk out, Ujunwa spoke again. I know things haven't been easy between us, Anthony, but can't we try to make it work? I still love you. Why can't we fix our marriage? Anthony took a deep breath. He knew this was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment to tell her the truth. I don't think we can fix it, Uju. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I think it's best we end this marriage. I'm sorry, but I don't love you anymore. I love someone else. Ujunwa stared at him, shocked, her heart broken into a million pieces as the tears flowed freely. Anthony felt relieved. He had finally said it. He walked out of the room, leaving her to deal with the pain. As Ujunwa tried to sit up, she suddenly felt something was wrong. She couldn't feel her legs. Panic filled her, and she screamed. The doctors and nurses rushed in, alarmed. What's wrong? The doctor asked urgently. I can't feel my legs. Ujunwa cried out, terrified. The doctor was surprised by her response. She tries to move her legs, but nothing happens. Ujunwa is scared and confused. The doctor examines her and asks her to try moving her toes, but she can't. The doctor performed several tests and then calls Anthony into the room. The doctor tells Ujunwa and Anthony that there might be some nerve damage from the fall, and more tests are needed to understand how serious it is. Ujunwa becomes very emotional, fearing that she may not be able to walk again. She cries, feeling overwhelmed by the thought of never being able to use her legs. Anthony, standing nearby, feels conflicted. He had been thinking about leaving Ujunwa to be with someone else, but now, with her condition, he knows it would look bad if he left. People would talk about how he abandoned her when she needed him most. Just then, Ujunwa's friend Adobe arrives at the hospital. As soon as Ujunwa sees her, she starts crying even harder. As Adobe hugs her and tries to comfort her, Anthony quietly leaves the room to give them privacy. Ujunwa explains to Adobe what the doctor said, and Adobe encourages her, telling her to stay strong and take it one step at a time. Ujunwa begins to express her guilt and regret over past mistakes. She believes that her current situation is a punishment for how she treated Isu, a man from her past. Adobe tries to reassure her, telling her not to think like that and to focus on getting better. But Ujunwa continues to cry, feeling overwhelmed by her emotions. The doctor comes in and gives Ujunwa something to help her sleep. As Ujunwa drifts off, Adobe stays by her side, feeling sorry for her friend. Adobe knows that the road ahead for Ujunwa will be tough, especially with her husband Anthony, who is clearly not fully committed to her anymore. Adobe resolves to support her friend through this difficult time. Later, Ujunwa's father comes to visit her in the hospital. He comforts her and promises to be there for her no matter what happens. Ujunwa feels grateful to have her father's support, and it gives her a little hope. Meanwhile, Ujunwa's mother, filled with guilt, blaming herself for Ujunwa's conditions. She regrets pressuring her daughter to stay with Anthony, believing that her interference led to Ujunwa's current situation. However, Ujunwa is still upset with her mother and doesn't allow her to come close to her. Ujunwa starts her physiotherapy with the hope of regaining her ability to walk. Anthony accompanies her to her first appointment, pushing her wheelchair as they enter the rehabilitation center. Ujunwa is nervous as she waits for her session to begin. The rehabilitation center feels cold and unfamiliar, and she can hear the sounds of other patients working with their therapists. Her physiotherapist, a friendly woman named Amara, introduces herself and assures Ujunwa that they will work together to get her back on her feet. Ujunwa feels a bit more comfortable with Amara's positive attitude, but is still anxious about the long journey ahead. Amara begins the session by assigning Ujunwa's condition, explaining that progress will take time and that every small improvement is a step toward recovery. Ujunwa tries to stay positive, but she can't help but feel discouraged when she still can't move her leg. She worries about whether she will ever be able to walk again. Amara encourages Ujunwa to focus on her mindset, telling her that the will to heal is just as important as physical therapy. She also reminds Ujunwa that she should have faith and not give up hope. Ujunwa admits that she feels disconnected from God, believing that her past mistakes have led her to her current situations. Amara tells her that it's never too late to ask for forgiveness and that God is always ready to listen. As the session goes on, Ujunwa feels weighed down by guilt over the choices she has made in the past, but she also felt a small sense of hope that maybe things can get better. At the end of the session, Amara praises Ujunwa for doing well and reassures her that with time and effort, she can make progress. Ujunwa thanks Amara for her honesty and encouragement, feeling a mix of emotions as she prepares to face the long road ahead of her. Ujunwa stayed in the hospital for 2 more weeks. During her time there, her physiotherapy session with Amara were very special. They didn't just help Ujunwa's body, they also helped her spirit. Ujunwa started reading her Bible and praying every day. One day, Amara prayed with her and Ujunwa decided to give her life back to God. When Ujunwa left the hospital, Anthony took her home. He hired their cleaning lady, Alice, to work full-time and take care of Ujunwa. Adobe, Ujunwa's friend, stayed with her for a few days but had to go back to work. She called Ujunwa every day to check on her. Ujunwa's father came to visit often, but Ujunwa did not want to forgive her mother. No matter how much her parents begged, Ujunwa remained firm. Ujunwa continued with her physiotherapy, but even as her spirit grew stronger, her body did not respond. She remained paralyzed. The doctors said they had done everything they could, but Ujunwa was just not getting better. One day, while Alice was helping Ujunwa, they started to talk. Ujunwa discovered that Alice was a Christian too. They shared Bible verses and prayed together. Alice invited Ujunwa to her church, but Ujunwa said she wasn't ready. Instead, Alice began sharing messages for her pastors. Anthony had changed. He no longer stayed out late at night, but their relationship was still strained. Ujunwa now slept in a room downstairs. She had a bell to ring if she needed help. Each morning, Anthony would check on her before going to work, and he would do the same at night when he returned. They did not talk much, share meals, or even sleep in the same bed. Ujunwa felt numb inside. She believed her marriage was over and that she deserved everything that happened to her. While everyone else focused on helping her walk again, Ujunwa felt stuck. She thought that as long as she could not walk, she was paying for her mistakes. Deep down, the feeling was stopping her from getting better. After a while, Anthony had to travel for work. He asked the hospital for a male nurse to help lift Ujunwa when needed. The day the nurse arrived, Ujunwa lay in bed and heard footsteps in the hallway. The door opened and Anthony came in with a tall man. He had a warm smile and looked friendly. "Uju," Anthony said, "this is Chike. He will help you while I'm away. Alice can't lift you by herself." Ujunwa looked at Chike. He seemed kind and confident. Chike noticed Ujunwa's beauty and he thought about how lucky Anthony was to have her as his wife. "Nice to meet you, ma'am. I'm here to help you with whatever you need," Chike said. "Nice to meet you too, Chike. You can call me Uju," she replied. Chike turned to Anthony, but he noticed that Anthony seemed indifferent. It was clear to Chike that their marriage was struggling. "Okay, Uju, we will work together to make things easier for you," Chike said with a smile. Anthony looked relieved that Chike would help. "Chike comes highly recommended. You will be in good hands while I'm gone," he said. "Thank you," Ujunwa replied quietly. "I'll be leaving tomorrow, but I'll call when I can. If you need anything, just ring the bell," Anthony said before leaving. Ujunwa felt grateful for Chike's help, but she was reminded of the distance between her and Anthony. As time went on, She decided to focus on building a new life for herself. Chike began discussing their daily routine. He explained how he would assist her with tasks and exercises that her physiotherapist had suggested. During the first week that Anthony was away, he did not call Ujunwa. She overheard him talking to Chike on the phone, but surprisingly, she did not mind. In fact, Ujunwa felt lighter without him around. She found herself enjoying Chike's company. He was not just a great nurse, he was easy to talk to and made her laugh. Sometimes, they shared meals with Alice. When Adobe visited, the laughter and conversation felt warm and comforting. Chike tried to stay professional. Ujunwa was not just beautiful, she was also smart and kind. He wondered how Anthony could have a wonderful woman like Ujunwa and still be unfaithful. Chike had overheard enough of Anthony's conversation to know that he was cheating. Helping Ujunwa with her exercises became harder for Chike. Every time he touched her skin to assist her, he felt butterflies in his stomach. He got lost in the way she spoke, and her smile made him feel things he didn't understand. By the end of the second week, Chike realized he was falling deeply in love with Ujunwa. Even though they had spent only a short time together, it felt special. Ujunwa was an amazing person, and he struggled to keep his feelings under control. Chike found himself at a crossroads. Should he quit his job and stay away from Ujunwa to protect his heart? Or should he remain and hope that one day she might feel the same way about him? This dilemma weighed heavily on him as he tried to manage his feelings while staying professional. And so, Ujunwa continued her journey, unaware of the feelings growing in Chike's heart. The future was uncertain, but Ujunwa was determined to find her way. Anthony had come back from his trip after some months, but things had changed. He no longer followed the routine of checking on Ujunwa in the morning and at night. Sometimes, days would pass without him seeing her. Ujunwa didn't seem to care, and when he did visit, their conversations were cold. Anthony would only stay for a minute or two before leaving. It was hard to believe how different things had become. When they were dating, Anthony used to shower Ujunwa with love and attention. He would buy her gifts and spoil her. They would talk all day, share jokes, and laugh together. After they got married, they spent their weekends going to events, enjoying each other's company. Now everything felt distant. They barely spoke to each other or stayed in the same room long enough to have a real conversation. Meanwhile, Chike was struggling with his own feelings for Ujunwa. He cared for her deeply, but it wasn't just about being her nurse anymore. One day, as Ujunwa slept, Chike sat beside her, watching her quietly. Suddenly, a strong feeling came over him. He knew if he didn't leave the room right away, he might do something he would regret. That day, Chike left work early and went to his small apartment. He sat down, staring at his phone, lost in thought. He knew he had to make a decision. He couldn't ignore his feelings for Ujunwa any longer, but he was also afraid of what might happen if he acted on those feelings. It was a tough choice, and his heart felt heavy with worry. The next day, Chike went to Ujunwa's house as usual. They were about to start their daily exercises when Ujunwa noticed something was different. "Chike, are you okay?" Ujunwa asked. "You seem a bit quiet today." Chike took a deep breath. He knew he had to tell her the truth about how he felt. "Ujunwa, there's something I need to talk to you about. It's been on my mind for a while, and I don't know how to say it," Chike said. Ujunwa looked at him, her eyes full of concern. "What is it, Chike?" "You can tell me anything," she replied. Chike's heart was beating fast. He knew he had to be honest with her. "Ujunwa, I care about you. I care about you more than just as your nurse. You are an amazing person, and I found myself falling for you," Chike said, his voice soft but serious. Ujunwa was surprised. She had felt a connection with Chike, but she didn't know he had feelings for her like this. "Chike, I don't know what to say. You've been so good to me, and I appreciate everything you've done. But right now, I'm still trying to figure things out with Anthony. My life is a bit of a mess," Ujunwa said, her voice gentle. Chike nodded. He understood that things were complicated and he didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable. I know it's not the right time, Ujunwa. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed to be honest. If it makes things awkward, I can step back or even resign, Chike said, his eyes full of sincerity. Ujunwa reached out and touched his hand lightly. No, don't resign. Your help means so much to me. Let's just take it one step at a time. I value our friendship, Chike, and I'm thankful for your honesty, Ujunwa said, giving him a small smile. Chike felt a wave of relief. He hadn't ruined their friendship, and he was glad for that. He decided to stay by her side, giving her support without crossing any lines. In the weeks that followed, their routine stayed the same, but there was now an unspoken understanding between them. Chike remained professional and kind, and Ujunwa appreciated his presence more than ever. She continued her therapy, but her body showed little signs of recovery. Anthony's absence from her life gave Ujunwa time to focus on herself. With Chike, her father, Adobe, and Alice by her side, she had a strong support system. Ujunwa also grew stronger in her faith. She tried to convince Chike to join her, but he laughed and told her religion wasn't for him. One afternoon, after a successful therapy session, Ujunwa sat in the living room, thinking about her life. She knew deep down that her marriage with Anthony was over, but the thought of starting over seemed too big to handle. Just as she was lost in her thoughts, Ujunwa's phone rang. It was a call from her boss, Mr. Okafor. She hadn't heard from him in a while since her accident. Mr. Okafor had given her a long leave and continued to pay half of her salary, which helped her a lot as she tried to figure out her life. Hello, Ujunwa, how are you? Mr. Okafor's voice came through the phone. I'm doing okay, sir. Thank you for checking in, Ujunwa replied, surprised by the call. I wanted to visit you at home. Is that alright? He asked. Yes, of course. You are welcome anytime, Ujunwa said. A few days later, Mr. Okafor arrived at Ujunwa's house. He was dressed sharply, just like he always was at the office. Ujunwa welcomed him warmly, happy to see her boss after such a long time. It's good to see you, sir. How is everyone at the office? Ujunwa asked. Mr. Okafor smiled and sat down across from her. The office is doing well, but we've missed you, Ujunwa. You were one of our best employees. I came to see how you are doing and to talk to you about something important, Mr. Okafor said. Ujunwa felt touched by his words. She had missed working and being part of the team. I've been trying my best, sir. Recovering is slow, but I'm getting there, Ujunwa said. Mr. Okafor nodded, looking thoughtful. We've been impressed with the work you did before the accident, and we want to offer you an opportunity to work remotely from the home until you are fully recovered, Mr. Okafor said. Ujunwa's eyes widened in surprise. She had been hoping for something like this, but didn't expect it to happen so soon. Really? I would love that. It would mean so much to me to start working again, Ujunwa said, her voice full of excitement. Mr. Okafor smiled. We will set you up with everything you need. The role will be flexible so you can balance your therapy sessions and work at your own pace, he said. Ujunwa felt happy. The thought of working again filled her with hope. She thanked Mr. Okafor repeatedly for the opportunity. After Mr. Okafor left, Ujunwa sat back in her chair, feeling a sense of purpose and excitement. She was ready to start planning her next steps, and she knew the first step would be finding her own place to live. Ujunwa had been thinking about her life for a long time. She knew deep in her heart that things between her and Anthony were not the same anymore. They used to be so happy when they first got married, but over time everything changed. Anthony was not as loving as he used to be, and Ujunwa felt alone even though they were still married. She thought it was time to make a big decision, and that decision was to end her marriage with Anthony. One day, Ujunwa sat down with Anthony to talk. She told him how she felt and how she thought it would be best for both of them to go their separate ways. Anthony listened quietly, and to Ujunwa's surprise, he agreed. He was happy that she was the one who brought it up, and he also thought it was the right thing to do. So they both decided to end their marriage. They signed the necessary papers to make everything official. Ujunwa packed her things, and with the help of her friend Adobe, she moved out of Anthony's house. Adobe was a good friend to Ujunwa, and she helped her find a new apartment where she could live. Ujunwa felt a bit sad to leave, but she knew it was the best thing for her. After Ujunwa moved into her new apartment, she tried to get back to her old life. She even thought about reaching out to Izu, her old friend who once cared for her deeply. She wondered if things could go back to how they were before she married Anthony. But when Ujunwa tried to find Izu, she learned something that made her feel sad. Izu had moved to Abuja and he had gotten married to someone else. When Izu found out that Ujunwa had married Anthony, he was heartbroken. He didn't think there was any hope for them, so he moved on with his life and met a woman he loved in Abuja. Ujunwa felt disappointed, but she understood that it was her choices that led her to this. Even though Ujunwa was sad about Izu getting married, she knew she couldn't blame anyone but herself. She had to live with them, but she wasn't completely alone. Her father often came to visit her in her new apartment. He was always there to support her and remind her that she was still loved. During one of his visits, Ujunwa's father talked to her about her mother. For a long time, Ujunwa had been angry with her mother for the way she treated her in the past. But her father told her that holding onto anger would not help her. He encouraged Ujunwa to forgive her mother and give her a second chance. Ujunwa thought about it for a while, and in the end, she decided to forgive her mother. She didn't want to carry that anger in her heart anymore. When Ujunwa reconnected with her mother, it felt like a heavy weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Her mother was sorry for her past, and she was happy that Ujunwa had forgiven her. From then on, Ujunwa's mother and Adobe were always around to help her whenever she needed anything. They supported her, and she never felt lonely because they were by her side. Ujunwa slowly began to rebuild her life. She focused on herself, her health, and her happiness. It wasn't easy, but with the love and support from her family and friends, she knew she could move forward. As for Anthony, he moved on with his life as well. After their divorce, he married the woman he had been seeing while still married to Ujunwa. Anthony never reached out to Ujunwa again, and Ujunwa didn't expect him to. She was okay with it because she had already moved on in her heart. Ujunwa learned a lot from everything that had happened in her life. She learned that life doesn't always go the way you expect it, but that it doesn't mean you can't get happiness again. She made mistakes, but she also learned to forgive, to let go, and to move forward. Now with her father, her mother, and Adobe by her side, Ujunwa felt ready to face whatever the future held. This was the end of one chapter in Ujunwa's life, but she knew that a new chapter was beginning, and this time she was ready for it. And with that, my dear friends, our story comes to a close. But remember, the magic of storytelling lives on, waiting to whisk us away on new adventures, where the wonders of imagination know no bounds. Goodbye for now, and may your dreams be filled with joy, wonder, and endless possibility. Thank you so much for watching. Please kindly comment, like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting stories.